All right, welcome. I am so excited to bring you our guest today. She is someone that I consider a close friend. She's a fellow sports mom. She is a professional in the space that I call on when I work with teams and organizations. And she's somebody that I've called on personally for my own kids. Rebecca McConville is a registered sport dietitian and expert in relative energy deficiency in sport, also known as Red S. She's the owner of Rebecca McConville Consulting, where she provides nutritional assessments for individuals, teams, and colleges. Her background, she's board certified. We joke that she is an alphabet soup after her name of all these different certifications, but the education is incredibly important in grounding and providing her a place to speak from that helps us truly, when we talk about this podcast and what this place is, to cut through the noise. She is a consultant, a teacher of teachers. She is also an author. She is a former podcast host and has developed and presented on workshops when it comes to eating disorders in many different spaces. And actually, the space that I met her in was at the Female Athlete Conference that Boston Children's Hospital hosts every other year. And we were joking about timeline. I think it was 2017 when I first heard her speak. And from a personal perspective, she is, when I was listening to her as an expert panelist, it was helping me connect dots in my own story. And at that point, it was, 12 years out of sport. I had been retired. And she helped me see through things through a new lens. And that, I say, is her superpower. One of her superpowers is helping take complex conversations that can tend to have a lot of emotional charge around them from our own lived experiences when we talk about food and nourishing. And she has this incredible way to just pull back and offer this perspective that helps us. I feel my body just let go. And I exhale when I listen to her, because the tools and strategies that she shares inside of this conversation and what we say is going to be many more to come are really practical and helpful. And as we are raising our kids and guiding our kids, and for those that have flown the nest and are out, at boarding school or in college or living on their own, this relationship that we have with our kids to nourish them, not only in the physical form with food, but also love and connection. This is just, she ties it all together. So without further ado, here is the conversation with Rebecca McConville. Welcome, Rebecca. So excited. That sounds funny, actually. I call you Becca or Coach B.
I know. We're getting all professional here.
Looking at your name, saying Coach B, right, in the academy. That's what we know you as. So thank you. I'm so grateful that you're here. I treasure our friendship, and I'm so grateful that I can lean on you in this space too, as we're working to serve athletes and parents, coaches, really pay forward all that we've known. So thank you for being here. Taking time.
Likewise, you're like my mom lifeline.
Well, we need each other, and that before we hit record, we actually, that's it, right? There's no playbook for this journey through parenting. Never mind parenting in sport, and so that's exactly why this space has been created, to be able to bring forward this conversation, to actually listen to real conversations, and then also pulling people like yourself in with so much expertise and nuggets. And full disclosure, I've hired Becca myself, right, for my own child, who, when she was navigating, so I've seen it not only professionally, but also firsthand as a mom, your impact in the work that you do in the world.
Oh,
yeah. So starting off, I would love for you to share a bit about your background. So we talk about the brain and our upbringing. We don't need to get all into that, but just kind of how your cultural upbringing and experience has shaped kind of who you are in the world, if you want to speak to that.
So I don't know if I ever shared this. It's kind of odd that my intro into performance nutrition was my dad owned a feed store. And so to make my allowance, I would custom make feed for people's show horses, cattle, etc. So I already had an exposure to the power of ingredients and mixing it together. So it's almost
cool.
Equine culinary. And then moving into being an athlete, naturally I waited until college. So we try to get our athletes to do it a lot earlier before then. I'm like, gosh, I wonder if I played around with what I was eating or my training, would that impact my performance? And it did, but like a lot of us, I
Yeah.
was like, if a little bit's good, a lot's going to be
Oh,
great. And then it took it a little too far. And that's also what got me into like a state of Reds. It wasn't called Reds at that time, which has now led me to my area of passion. Yeah.
oh my gosh, I had no idea. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that part of it. Yeah, and that so you were kind of experimenting on your own before even knowing, like, when you were growing up, did you know this would be your path? Did you have, or it was kind of like an organic? Yeah.
Not a clue, but then it's funny as I would start to learn, I'd be like, oh yeah, we would add Jello, which is collagen,
Yeah.
into the feed for to strengthen horses' hooves. Or actually, I raised longhorn cows, and so it would help their horns stay healthy. So it's so funny now when I recommend these things to humans that
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that back when I was like 10.
Oh my
So
goodness. Yeah, so cool. So one of your areas of expertise is in reds, and I still don't think that that's even, people are like, I don't know what that is. I haven't heard of that. So, yeah, do you want to start there and just kind of introducing what that is, and
yeah.
we'll just let this roll. Yeah.
You bet. Well, I keep things about as simple as possible. And so when you think about it, it's a mismatch of the deposits that should be coming in, so AK, our food and calories,
Mhm.
versus the withdrawals. And I think where a lot of people miss the mark, especially with our youth athletes, is one, you need fuel just to sit here and breathe. Two,
I
you
love
need
that we
fuel
got
to
a
be
thumbs up. We got a thumbs
a
up on the screen with your
All right.
phone. So that distracted me.
Oh, sorry.
I love it. So yeah, so yes, so one and then two. I cut you off there. Yeah.
Two, they're students, so our
Yeah.
brain requires 25% plus of our
Hmm.
daily energy. Hence why when we take tests or we have a stressful day, we want to take a nap, get a snack, and
Hmm.
have a nap. And then third, well, actually, I should probably back up. They're still growing. That's a huge piece of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of parents, I joke, it's like the hole in the bucket. You're trying to do the best you can to keep up.
Hmm.
And then fourth is their activity. Well, unlike college athletes where we've got 8, 12, 20 hours of just one activity with strength and conditioning, etc., some of these athletes might be doing 3 different sports at the same time overlapping, and it is so hard to keep up with the deposits. And so really trying to help parents keep it convenient, keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes figure out, like, is this in their athlete's best interest to be really doing, 5, 6 hours of activity a day?
Totally. Yeah. Well, and being at school, and some teachers allow for food in the room, some don't, right?
Right.
But that idea of like the 6 hour block. I was just running a workshop where we mapped out the schedule so they could start to see like where they could fuel, where they could work on mind body connection. And it was like eye opening for them to see, okay, if I'm sleeping this much and I'm in school this long, like where, right? How am I, just the amount that is, not to make a pun, but on their plate, right? Like that they have
Yeah.
every day. Um,
Too
yeah.
much on their
So,
plate, but not what they need on their plate.
right. When it comes to nutrition. And the other piece is just the awareness of my body needs these things regardless of activity level. Like just me sitting here. I think that's one of the things I've heard you say. Like if you're just sitting on the couch, your body's still needing that output of energy in order to
Yep.
function. Yeah. Yeah. And the
Absolutely.
brain. So thank you for sharing that. So Reds, and you have a book too. We can link
Hmm.
that in the call notes as
Thank you.
well. That was what connected us originally when you were at the female athlete conference that Boston Children's Hospital hosts, and I was listening to you talk, and that was like connecting dots for me. I can't remember when that was. Probably back maybe
Oh,
like
that was
2017.
pre-COVID. That's how we do things
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And listening to you share, talking about just the like implications. I'd never, I have been in recovery now from a diagnosed eating disorder for 23, what year are we in? 20, no, 25 years, 25. I'm like, oh my goodness, time. And I just never heard it talked about the way that, like so simply. It was in the systems in our body. And I was teaching anatomy and physiology, like just never had thought about it in that way. So I remember we were both reaching out to each other at the same time to
Uh-huh.
connect with each other.
Divine
So
intervention.
totally, totally. Yeah. So let's like rewind a bit more too with your sport journey. You referenced it, but what role did sport play in your life growing up?
Huge, and still does. I love, like, just coming off of March Madness, like, great, like, feels like the greatest time of the year, secondary to Easter and Christmas. Like, so all of my cousins played basketball, my dad played basketball, so naturally you end up following a sport that normally somebody else does. But I had the greatest time because I also grew up in a very rural town where a lot of people didn't. And so I
Mm.
would truck along with my dad to his senior Olympics team and practice. So I grew up playing with guys that my daughter doesn't know who these people are, but like they played against Wilt Chamberlain and
Yeah.
like
Oh, wow.
Bryce Drew was the nephew. And so I had these people that were just such great, well balanced at that point professionals because they were older, but they were also still doing their sport and loved it. And so it was
Mm.
great for me to be like, there is no age that you have to age out of your sport. And if you take care of your body, you could be doing this. I mean, we had a guy that was 82 that was still showing up and would ball out the whole time.
That's so fun.
Um, so
Wow.
then moved to go to college and, that next competitive level does kind of lead you looking for, oh boy, I got to really up my game. I could get away with certain things in high school.
Mm.
And so it made me more sensitive to what our athletes explore or encounter when they're on their own and they're
Hmm.
having to be in the dining hall and you're living with your teammates. Somebody should do a study on that. Like, is that really the best thing to be with your teammates
24/7.
24/7?
That's so true.
I loved
That's
them,
so
but there
true.
were times we wanted to strangle each other.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and then when I started exploring what I was eating in my training, I thought, man, this is kind of cool. I like this. But I had a degree in biology or studying biology at that time and found out, well, Becca, you can't just go on. You have to get a second undergrad. So I left, but my now husband, I had started to date, and he's like, you just light up when you talk about this stuff.
Mm.
Don't you think it's worth going back to school to follow your dreams? So gotta give him credit. He helped support me so I could go back and get my second undergrad, and then the rest is history. Like, it's not even just the performance nutrition. I just love like our holistic
Mm.
balance that comes from our nutrition for our mental health, our connection with
Totally.
others, and performance as well.
Oh my gosh. I love that mirror moment for him. That's so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Yeah. And that 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 part lights you up in following that joy. And the holistic piece is totally where, I mean, that's where we have so much synergy. Is just seeing the body, like the human as a whole, right? And thinking about in terms of not just like I'm an athlete, but I'm a human who's striving in sport, and seeing that
Yeah,
piece, yeah, come together. Yeah.
absolutely.
So current connection to sport. So you're also a mom of an athlete too. So I want to
Yes.
speak to kind of what your relationship is in sport, even professionally, and what that looks like today.
Yeah, so I used to coach her, and then we kind of got to the point where, and rightfully so, she was like, I'm ready for you just to be mom
Mhm.
and then have somebody else coach. But sometimes I do step in and help practice. So it's been fun. I'm 5'4" and she's like 5'8". So it's funny how I used to be able to easily beat her at one-on-one. Not so much anymore.
That's so fun. Uh,
But it's nice to still go out and do that. But it gives me empathy to what coaches experience,
mm,
how I always say what was said and what was heard. And
mm,
a lot of times in the moment, coaches might be spitting out things because they're trying to corral 10, 11 players in the heat of a moment. And so I understand they sometimes say things that get misinterpreted.
mm-hmm.
And I also understand, we're dealing with kids that are having autonomy in so many things for the first time in their life,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's what sports they choose, what foods they want to choose. And so they
Mm-hmm.
need some navigation, but they don't need a step by step.
Yeah. Well, that you're like right into that space of two things you bring up there. One is the filter. I think of it like, so the brain, right? All the things we've gone through as literally glasses. And for those that are just listening, I'm like playing with my glasses on my face. Like how we see the world, how we hear the words is impacted by our lived experience. And the same thing, that's that dance of like what's said, what's heard. And I think we carry with us because from birth, right, we have this relationship with food. And so that's going to be unique for each individual, their journey, unique for the coaches. And so we bring with us, my mentor, Greg Harden, used to say, like, we all have baggage. Maybe not so eloquent, but true, right? Like we
Well,
all have
very
our
true.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so what are we bringing into that space, right, when it comes to food? And you segued into control. And I think like that piece when it comes to parenting and even coaching and leading young people through the space, like when you say not necessarily step by step but information, so how do we strike that balance? Like I know there's not one single answer, but guideposts to maybe help us with this space of relinquishing what we really can't control, and to reduce the times that we get into that power struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times just putting it back on them. Like if you see they're starting to make some changes with their food choices, or maybe they're asking you to get this from the grocery store, be like, huh, why is that? And so they may say
Curiosity.
like, hey, yeah, I watched this TikTok video and this recipe looked really good. Or at school, somebody was talking about it, and be like, well, are you sure that's accurate? So like, if there's something you think doesn't make sense, or if they tell you I don't know, then that's your prompt that you probably want to ask a little bit more if they're going down that rabbit hole of maybe some disordered information.
Mm.
I mean, we still rely on Google,
Mm-hmm.
teammates, and coaches in that order for information with their knowledge around nutrition.
Yeah. So what does that like, where does that like walk us to, right? Speak to that. Yeah.
No
What would you
man's land.
say?
No,
Like,
just kidding.
well, because
Yeah.
that's a question I have for you, is kind of like, where are we getting it right and where are we missing, collectively, I think. Yeah.
Well,
Assuming
and
that, like, one of the assumptions of this entire space is that we're all of us, coaches, parents, experts, the athletes themselves, the humans, we're all doing the best that we can with what we know, with the resources we have. And so it's about, okay, well, let me pause and actually pause and get curious. Like that tool alone right there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I always say I'm the expert of nutrition, but you're the expert of you.
Mm.
So let's figure this out together. So if there's
Mm-hmm.
something that they think they might want to cut out, or they want to play around with certain macronutrient ratios, I'm like, fine, let's do it, but let's do it for a week.
Mm.
And I want you to write data down that you get from it. So you're not just kind of guess if you think that it helped you. Because how many times do we have athletes that maybe have made changes to their nutrition and training for a desired outcome, but they never even stop to see if it actually improved
Mm-hmm.
that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way it's like making a research study, and
Mm-hmm.
then they come back with that and be like, all right, maybe that did work for you, or maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we need to try something different, like getting adequate sleep or
Yeah.
something.
Well, base of it, right? Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that it's
Foundation.
we joke, but that's so real, right? Just basics of hydration and sleep. And then in the fuel piece too. And I love how you talk about the building blocks and the foundation of the house too. Do you feel like, are you okay to share that and speak?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
was saying. So many times, like they'll comment like, "Hey, I'm about this supplement or that supplement," and I'll say like, "Where's your foundation at?" So for somebody to build upon to get the desired training adaptations and performance they want, they can't have holes in the foundation. So usually
Mm-hmm.
we want to have something within an hour of waking. So
Mm-hmm.
all those athletes that don't like breakfast, it is break the fast, and we can work with that to make it something they like and is easy. Then from there, usually our next meal is 4 to 5 hours, and the next meal is about 4 to 5 hours. And so from there, I like to call snacks energy extenders.
I love that.
So they're one
Mm-hmm.
of those things where if like breakfast and lunch are close together, then you probably don't need a whole lot of an extension, unless maybe you've had a bunch of training, or maybe you're already hungry. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But then a lot of our youth athletes are going to have practice after school,
Mm-hmm.
and then dinner might get pushed back to more like 8 o'clock. No shame in that. I'm in the
Mm-hmm.
same boat. So we need more of an extension. So that may actually look more like a small meal to get them to dinner time. But if they don't have those filled in, then all the rest is just leaning, asking for something to tilt, which usually ends up being an injury, or they're
Mm-hmm.
grasping at straws, which takes them down fad diets or risky behavior with supplements.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's the visual component to that is so strong when you then pair it with the bank account piece of just like you needing
Mm-hmm.
the energy. And if you don't have it, if it's not there, then the house starts to lean. And one of the places and spaces that you help me connect the dots, which again, it's like, it makes sense as a human, we need the food, but I never thought about, oh, we also need the food to make the neurochemicals that make us feel
Mm-hmm.
good. So yeah, I'll just let you take it from there and share what you want there. But that idea of like feeling good, to fueling well, and having that foundation to feel good, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because our culture puts so much emphasis on your food directly impacting how your body looks and how your
Mm-hmm.
body acts.
Fully.
And so it also should be flip flop. Your body and your brain can impact what you're craving or desiring from your food. But yes, our food gets broken down into energy, but that energy also crosses into the brain, and that creates neurotransmitters. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like little codes that say, hey, is Becca sad right now? Is she
Mm-hmm.
excited? Is she anxious about something? And if we don't have that, then the brain just kind of flattens and does only what it needs to do. And so that's where they kind of seem disconnected, or you might hear something really simple like they just don't seem like themselves. But that's because they don't have the fuel to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say to a parent who's noticing, like, one of the things I've taken from you with that is asking that question first, almost like fuel, like how is our, are we fueling ourselves well? Are we sleeping well? Before diving deeper into exploring other areas and taking care of those things first, right? Would you say, like, is that aligned? Like, I guess, like, am I taking that information and like applying it in a way that you would suggest? So when we're raising these young kids, when we're walking them through, or even young adults, and we're noticing they're like a little bit off, like they're not themselves, or maybe they are having, navigating or nagging injuries. Like, how do we put that filter on with curiosity to get more information about where they're at fuel wise?
Yeah. So as a parent, I think it's perfectly appropriate to say to your kid, like, hey, as your parent, I am responsible for your physical and mental health to an extent, right? And so, hey, can you just share with me, like, are we still getting in 3 meals, 3 snacks a day? And have you made any changes to those? Because it seems like you're not as excited to go to practice, or you're struggling to get your homework done as quickly as you were a month ago. And so I just want to see if there might be something there. They might kind of still balk at that for a little bit, but when they see you're not necessarily like trying to hover over them and tell them what to do, they're like, oh, you know what? I've been rushing out the door at 7th hour when I normally have my snack, and I've been trying to go in and get my homework checked. And so I haven't had my snack for the last couple of weeks. Like, they're just like us, right? They're running around 90 to nothing. And sometimes they miss the things that seem most obvious until somebody stops them and has them reflect on that as well.
It's that pausing. Yeah, there's so much power in that. And then even the way you approach that is not this controlling, like coming in with control of what they're eating, or you need to eat this, or like, and I think that we get caught in that because we care and maybe we're worried, right, as a parent. And so that just open-ended questions to help them, almost those mirror moments, just reflect on what is actually going on for them. What's the line of like guideposts around coming back to that control piece of like what's too far for a parent versus like kind of the just right space of navigating and supporting when it comes to food? And does it vary by age maybe?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'd say obviously when we get to be like 12 and under, they're still going to need quite a bit of help with like times that they're eating and the types of foods that they're eating, and then just helping them with probably portion size. But if there's anybody out here that's at school, you guys have a lot of power behind. Instead of having these kids like log their food and do a calorie count, let's do the principles of intuitive eating. So many, not even kids, they go from kids to adults, and I'll be like, how would you define a hunger level of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And they look at you like, well, I know when I'm not hungry, and I know when I'm like, my stomach is growling, I'm starving, I need to get food ASAP. And then there's a lot in between. Same thing with like fullness. So being able to teach kids like, okay, what is your hunger telling you right now? And then here's some balanced options. So you could even put that like in the fridge for when they get home from school, or setting rules. Like, I think it's perfectly okay. I still have to sometimes even get onto my daughter. No, please don't go get a snack when we have dinner in 20 minutes.
Yeah,
like it's getting ready to get out of the oven.
Literally.
Like, you can just wait. Like,
no, we don't need an energy extender right now because we're 20 minutes away. Yeah, that happens.
We're in the finish line. We don't need an extension. But I think that is fine. When they get older and they're able to have a little bit more independence, or maybe they're even driving, then I think the grocery list is a good tell. So if they're kind of inputting what they would like for their lunches or snacks, and you're seeing a change in the type of food, or there's less requests for it, I think to bring that up.
Yeah. And in a similar way around like, hey, I've noticed, like what's a follow-up? What's a question to ask where we're not coming in and getting although it's always a possibility, like the door shut or the armor up. Like, what's a question where we could lead with curiosity, where you could ask in that situation if you've noticed, like, and I've noticed this, and then what do we ask?
Yeah. So, I don't want to name any bars because I don't want to be triggering, but maybe a kid always liked this particular like granola bar.
Got you.
And then they come in like, hey, mom, can you get this one? But you know this particular bar to be associated with a lot of like diet related trends or products.
Mm-hmm.
And then asking him like, what is it now you like about this bar? Were you burnt out on the previous one? Or where did you learn about this? So you can get an idea where they got their information.
Okay.
Could be somebody brought like we had a discussion recently where a friend had brought this certain bar, but I kind of knew it to be diety. And then she's like, oh, I had it and I love it. It tastes like cookie dough, blah, blah, blah. Like I got a sense that it wasn't coming from a place of disorder. It was, I actually tried this and liked it and now I want it. And so, okay, I'm all
I
right with
love
that.
that. Yeah. So your questions are around, I've noticed this, or like, tell me more. Like where'd you, yeah. So just really like pausing and getting curious, which requires us to put down our own stuff, right? That filter that we bring, our own relationship with food and our own relationship with control. And that, yeah, that I love that. I'm taking notes there. Yes. I'm just pausing. It's that intentional pause and asking genuinely with curiosity, without judgment. Yeah.
And a big thing I think a lot of parents go through, and rightfully so, when kids begin to develop autonomy with food choices, they just sometimes do overindulge, right?
Mm.
It's the first time they're like, hey, I can go to the candy drawer and have whatever I want, or I can go after school and get whatever biggest snack I want. And so they just need an understanding of how that may not set them up for the healthiest balance. Like, well, again, like we talked about snack, like if you come home and eat a huge snack and dinner's going to be an hour and a half, and then you're not eating this nice balanced meal that mom spent or dad spent time making, then they need to understand why you're getting onto them. It's not that you feel like that food is bad. It's about the pattern. I feel like a lot of parents try to control that by creating scarcity. So they don't allow for those foods to be in the house. But the problem is that tends to make us all want to even more. And then that already starts labeling if a kid goes to a different household and like, wow, they have all these different foods in the pantry. And, all we have are, I've been told is I can have fruits or vegetables. They're going to probably then overindulge when they're at a friend's house or a gas station. And so when things are just there and present, ironically, we typically don't want it as much.
Then when we're told we can't have it,
Exactly.
That's like human nature.
Exactly.
Totally. And you use the language bad, like good and bad. And I think that was one of the things that when I was first stepping into recovery, I was challenged by, was that language. And at first I was like, I wanted to punch back. Like, no, there really are foods that are good and bad. And we talk about this. We talked about this and, and address this inside the academy. Will you speak to that idea of like what that judgment, like just what's the cost of that, right? And what's an alternative?
Yeah. Well, you and I, we love talking about how the brain functions. So I always explain like, we can all remember walking by the stove and somebody going, oh, be careful, the stove is hot. What do we naturally want to do?
Touch it.
Because what's happened is you've used strong fear-based language. And so the brain goes to primal brain, and then that's all it can focus on and think about to protect you. So when we go like, oh, don't eat that, that's bad for you. Well, now you put that food front and center, and then you've made them start thinking, uh-oh, I've eaten that food before. Does that mean I'm bad, or does that mean I'm not a healthy eater? And so that's where we really want to move away from language. And I always talk about like, there's a time and a place for every and all food. Sure, we probably don't want to come straight from a Mexican restaurant and then go on a soccer field and run up and down. I'm betting your GI tract may not like it. Some kids might be able to get away with it. But if it's after a game and you're going to sit down and you're going to relax and you're going to enjoy that with your teammates, absolutely. So context really matters when we start talking about specifics with nutrition.
And that's, at the beginning you said like we go into Google, what was the second? Coaches and
Google,
friends?
teammates and coaches.
It's in that order. And so where do we get information from? Like I've learned an enormous amount from you by both through my daughter, those conversations, and then also just working with you. That's helped. Like that one thing that sticks out to me, and I just feel like I have to bring it in, was the salt thing. Like I still am stuck on that. I thought salt was so bad, and here she is like wanting so much salt, and come to find out that's a Googleable thing that wasn't correct. Like, right. And something that we were taught growing up. And so where do we find our North Star? Like how do we cut through the noise so that we can actually find information that's solid, it's aligned, it's backed. Yeah. How do
Yeah.
we do this?
Now that is one I'll say is honestly tough. I even in like a lot of my presentations, I'll just demonstrate where I did a Google search like caloric needs of a 18-year-old cross country runner, and it was funny how many different answers and the vast
Came
array.
up.
But what was craziest, none of them were right.
Mm.
They were still way off the mark. So I think a couple things that can be helpful is obviously follow professionals in the field that
Mm.
are sports and REDS informed professionals. It could be a dietitian, it could be a strength coach, it could be a physical therapist, like you name it.
But I
The
love
other
that the
thing,
Reds informed, because that's also very real. Like that, there's
yes,
yes. So
the
yeah,
world of sport, as much as we love it, is still very disordered.
yeah, yeah.
So you have to take sometimes thing with grain of salt. The other piece is like if you ever hear me talk, I'll say the evidence shows, and then I'll spit out a study or I'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about what we're finding on a position statement. So if somebody is giving a direct recommendation about a type of nutritional plan or food,
Mm-hmm.
they should follow it up with some sort of evidence.
Yep.
If somebody's saying, I did this and it
Yep.
worked for me and it should work for you, run. Like,
Literally. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's usually anecdotal
Or
and it's
paid
going to
for.
be, yeah, or paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I hate to tell this to a lot of my athletes, but so many professional athletes that are sponsored by a company don't even use those products.
Yes, true. Yes, I've seen that too, which is tough, right? Even some of the sponsorship, yeah, all that's so layered. But
And
that awareness, again, pause. Where did you get this? Where did you learn this from? Not in a like sit you down and like try to pull it out of you, but rather like let's get like where do we want to get our information? How
yeah,
do we want to source and sift through? I love that idea. So following professionals, and that's a place that's easy for us, for those that are on social media still, like going to Instagram and following. I love, like try these things or before practice or after practice, or
mm-hmm.
the questions that you're asking. So following you on Instagram, filling our feeds with information from sources that we know are out there researching and updating and staying current with that information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and give it a shot. Like start with a week. I've also seen where athletes are adamant about continuing it and they know it's not working, but they're like, "Well, but they told me I should do this." And I'm like, you've got chronic constipation now. We're
Yeah.
dealing with a bone stress injury, and like I'm pretty sure that that is not supportive for you.
Yeah. So what the body is saying to you too, paying
Right.
attention to that. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So shifting gears a bit, this question comes from my partner in crime, I say Jen, who fellow sports mom, right? She'll be in and out of the podcast, but she's working behind the scenes, and her question for you is, often teams have a parent or a team snack after, right? So families likely have a variety of relationships with food, and the snacks that are brought are often a variety that might reflect time, cost, energy. What advice do you have to families or kids to navigate a sometimes tricky situation?
It's a good question. So what you could probably do so you have like it's not yours alone is to like I'm here I am gonna say Google like registered dietitian or sports dietitians preferred after practice snacks.
Mm.
Lots of them have lists that they give out, but the biggest thing is to make sure it's balanced with carb, protein, and fat,
Hmm.
not just protein.
Yes.
Everybody like, well, they got their protein shake. Well, that's great, but you just burnt through your glycogen, which is your
Hmm.
stored form of glucose and carbohydrate. You need to replenish that and have protein fat, which is why most of our bars are balanced like that. In
Hmm.
sports beverages, it doesn't have to be a bar or sports beverage. Chocolate milk's still the gold standard and a whole lot cheaper too.
Yeah. Yes. And I love that you brought that into with the house when we took back to the foundation and the proteins, carbs, and fats. That was in the workshop where we were sharing we collaborate together to support that team. We were reflecting on that, just brainstorming ideas, because it's been a while since we've talked about it, and they put up examples. And so then I went through with I know foods have a variety of different nutrients, but like we went kind of overgeneralizing to make a point that it's not just protein. Where's the F and
Right.
the C? Like, where is it in this meal? And what could we add there? So yes, so that idea of, and even, when it comes to the emotional component and the connection component, for those posts, like I've seen all different kinds of spreads like that, or even before games or in between games, if you're at tournaments and things, a way to, is it worth it for us as parents to have conversations around like fuel that's healthy and aligned that's going to support performance? Or do we, just say free for all, like bring whatever? Because a lot of times, that gets filled with the candies and all sorts of things that are in there.
Yeah. And I get a lot of times as parents probably like, oh crud, I have snack today, and they're
Exactly.
like running through. I'm guilty as charged, so I'm not
Same.
judging. And so, I would say if there's like a coach on a team or even a parent that wants to take the lead, maybe just like we would do in the good old sign up days for like class parties, have a list. Have a list of well-balanced snacks. That way, when they have their day, they can just go run in and grab one of those things or two of those things on there. And they're not standing there overwhelmed looking, because grocery stores love that. The more overwhelmed you are, the more impulsive. So you spend more money.
That makes sense. I love the list too. What, like an awesome idea of that intentional pause in advance, so that when you're in the moment or on the go, right, you're able to make choices that are aligned and not impulsive.
Yeah.
And her second question, how do you talk to coaches regarding RED-S? Now, I know you do this professionally. You support not just coaches, but also professionals in the space, or other things that may be going on with your child. So from a parent perspective, how, some coaches, I've heard it, I have had the opportunity to work with and connect with coaches who are on board. They're aware, they're in, they're like, my husband's an example, right? And it's strength and conditioning, but still like very aware, like leaning into CE credits, trying to better understand it and feeling comfortable talking about it. Then there are those coaches, and it's not them, like I'm not othering here. It's just coaches who are in a space where they say outright, like, I'm not touching that conversation with the 10-foot pole. Like, I'm not going there. That's not my job. That's not my role. There's fear there when it comes to anything that regards food and an athlete. So the question is like, what is your suggestion in talking to a coach with what may be going on? So hard to give specific information, and coaches likely need some idea that the kids or parents are facing while respecting privacy. So how do you bring it up?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like coaches they owe it to their athletes, right? They're responsible for their well-being to mold them to be the best athlete. And we should probably put person first, that, right? Like person, then athlete. So if they're noticing this athlete really seems to be struggling, I mean, they're getting slower on the field or the court. I've even heard where they're like, well, we noticed they used to order this when we traveled, and now they're switching it to this.
The
Like
eyes they have the eyes, totally. And it's so it's kind of like, let's hit it from all different angles too. So starting with the coach, like if they see this, then what?
Yeah. So I'll have them be like, come up to that athlete and be like, hey, I've noticed that you've made some changes in like your nutritional choices when you're out with the team. Have you made sure you ran this by a sports dietitian? And like, I'm vested in you. I want you to have your best season yet. So why not, dot all the I's, cross all the T's, right? What do you have to lose? And so you're keeping it in a positive spin. Or if an athlete is getting injured all the time, be like, hey, let's just make sure there's not some things that we can do from a nutritional standpoint that might be able to improve the resiliency of your body so you're not injured, because I need you out on that field. I need you out on that court, or I need you to contribute to your team points. And so they're not overstepping and trying to provide recommendations. They're addressing the problem. That's apparent, right? That athlete's not going to not know that that's happening. And then they're trying to get him to a trusted professional.
Exactly.
When you're talking to a parent, you may say like, hey, like, I'm going to give you all the tools in the toolbox, and using this dietitian, using this strength coach, using this PT is part of that. And so I wouldn't be doing your athlete any good if I just ignored it.
Yes. So saying something. Yes.
You can't, they can't not. Yeah.
The other piece too, so injury, I don't think we often think about that. Like you do, right? The way you talk about it, the energy, paying your bills, but the injuries and then the immune system, like just constantly sick and needing energy in order for your immune system to do its job. Absolutely. And then the mood piece. So I think those dimensions, kind of expanding our awareness to see, let's check in on nourishment. And then from a parent perspective, if you notice something. We've kind of touched on that, but if you're trying to communicate maybe to the coaches or those that are in the, supporting your child in different spaces, what is a way to share without sharing too much? Like what would be helpful, or is it something that we don't share? Yeah.
To the parent.
To the coaches. So as from a parent perspective, like
Oh,
you've connected, let's say your child with the support that they need. And I think that comes back to like using RDs, like using people like yourself as a means of support. We can't, right? Like I'm a huge advocate of that. And I know that it's a privilege in many ways, right? To be able to hire resources. And also there's a lot of like following accounts like yours and others where we can, learn a lot that we can instill in our home. And then when it's time, calling in professionals. Do we communicate that to the coaches? Is it necessary for them if we're handling that at home? Like, what do we share as parents?
and that's like the $1 million question, because it all depends on the relationship with the coach. So I will ask the parents and the athletes, like, would you like your coach to be involved or be in the
Mm,
know? And I leave that up to them. And it may be like, hey, I've been working with your athlete. I just want you to know that we've got some really cool things. We're focused on nutrition. So I'm not giving them specifics,
mm-hmm,
but I'm telling them, like, I think your athlete was struggling with their overall energy, which is probably why you've been seeing
mm-hmm.
XYZ in their performance. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Now, I'm not going to give them specifics about that athlete, but it may just be that the coach was not aware or is like, phew, good, they're with somebody.
Totally.
Yeah. Now, if the coach tends to be overbearing and
Mm-hmm,
oversteps, and then I'll say, like, all right, I'll have the parent intervene and then use whatever dialogue or language we need to kind of put that protective barrier around that athlete. So that way the coach isn't. And I always say, like, look, I'm a sports dietitian. I love sports. I love performance. So I'm not going to do something to detriment the health and performance of your athlete and ruin your
mm-hmm.
team and this and that.
Well,
So, like, we're working
yeah,
together.
there's so much fear around that. That was kind of another piece to this question. I was like, what do you like the resistance to engaging with someone like you? Like I can speak from like when I was in the trenches of just struggling and, again, mentioning how you helped me connect dots. Like I was under fueling for a very long time. And that led to injury in my shoulder, which spiraled into this really dark place with my nervous system and this freeze response. And when it was suggested to me very strongly, kind of told that I needed to go see someone to talk about it, I was like, no way, like they're going to make me slower. That was like the internal dialogue was this massive amount of fear. And I'm not saying that's the case for everyone. I'm just curious what other objections or resistance to engaging that exists when it comes to working with somebody.
That's a
Yeah.
good question, because a lot of times I would love to ask athletes. I think a couple things that I've heard is, one, they think we're going to be like the strict meal plan,
Mm-hmm.
do this, log everything, follow it, and it's going to taste like dirt.
Well, even as you say that, that brings up like I was afraid that I was going to be told I was doing it wrong, or like like this, exactly that, like the strict plan, and that was going to be one more place where I was maybe falling short or felt like I
Yeah.
was, bad. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
The
so interesting.
the other piece that I've seen is being protective of disordered behaviors they don't want to get rid
Mm-hmm.
of. If they're like, if it almost becomes that's their identity. I
Mm-hmm.
am the healthy eater. I do this, I do that, and I don't want
Mm-hmm.
them to tell me to do anything opposite of that. Then they're resistant. I think third is they just don't really understand what a dietitian does, because it is very broad. We've got from the dietitians that work in a hospital setting that's really important,
Mm-hmm.
all the way into food science, into private practice. Like, so they don't really understand specifically the role of what a sports RD can do,
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Yeah. Will you share that? Like your particular lane. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always tell an athlete, and I do have to hop off here in a minute. Is that all
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that, all right. I always tell an athlete, like, I'm going to ask you questions that aren't related to nutrition, but it's helping me get the big picture. So I will ask about their training cycles, injury cycles, how well did they progress like they should, what's their sleep, etc., blah, blah, blah. So it paints me the picture.
Mm-hmm.
But then I always bring it back to nutrition. Well, like, hey, did you happen to think about the fact that, you aren't doing a bedtime snack? you eat dinner at 5, you go to practice, and then you're waking up at 7. Maybe that's what's impacting your sleep, is you're going, 14 hours without fueling. Let's
Yes.
try XYZ, right?
Mm.
And because I do understand sports
Mm-hmm.
and the environments and the training, like for example, it might be weather shifting right now, so it warms up, and that's a lot of stress on the body until we get acclimated. So it will
Mm.
impact appetite, it'll impact your food choices. And so I think about that ahead of time to help them, and they're like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. You're
That's
right. That's
exactly it. That's what I feel like you do in a nutshell. Like
yeah.
you help just like perspective, zooming out, seeing the whole human, and then being able to bring it back to ultimately being able to thrive in life, like by making sure that we're fueling properly. Yeah. So I know I want to honor your time. I know you have to pop. Where like so when it comes to where people can find you, follow you, hire you, like what's the best way to be in touch with you?
Yeah. So they can follow. Okay, I heard the kids, it's no longer Graham. We call it Insta.
Oh my
So,
God. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
yeah, at Rebecca ED dietitian, and
Okay.
then my website, beccamcconville.com. But hopefully we can do a part 2, 3,
Oh,
4,
we've got
because
so much to
I
talk
could
about.
talk all day
I know.
long.
I would love, yeah, for you to come in, especially in this, like the whole list of questions I sent you from a team I'm working with. Yeah, not that we need to go through all of them, but there's so much to discover. So thank
Yeah.
you and welcome. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
so appreciate you. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
well,
Until next
likewise.
time. Yeah.
All right, till part 2.
Okay. Yes. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye, Sam.